We're going to get going in a few minutes as people hop on. Just a reminder, this is a webinar format. Good. We got a couple people. We'll just wait 1 or 2 more minutes. Thanks for joining us today. Again, this is a webinar format. We are discussing the MyCT Savings Plan. I'm joined today by our very good friends of the Chamber, Derek Mazzarella, Gateway Financial Partners, and Eric Judge from Edward Jones. Good. All right, let's get started. It is 10:02. Again, thanks everybody for being here. This is a webinar format, so I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A function. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Jessica Olander, the president of the Connecticut River Valley Chamber. Again, joined by our good friends, Derek Mazzarella, Gateway Financial Partners, and Eric Judge from Edward Jones. Thank you both for being here. Let's get started and see what we need to know about the MyCT Savings Plan. Derek, why was this law put into place and when?
It was actually put into place in 2016, so it's taken a quick 6 years to enroll this program. The reason it was put into place was really twofold. One, we're kind of historically terrible savers, especially if we don't automate it. Most people, actually about 40% of Americans, rely solely on Social Security for their retirement. The average Social Security payment is actually about under $20,000 a year. Most people I know can't really live on that. So the state is kind of coming in and asking companies to help do some lifting in terms of helping employees save. And in Connecticut specifically, there are 600,000 private sector employees that currently do not get a company-sponsored retirement plan.
Wow, so just a quick, short 6 years to get all this in place. That's great. And can you talk a little bit about the compliance dates, how the employers have to comply? What are the, the thresholds for employees and things?
Sure. So it's actually a pretty low bar. So as long as you have at least 5 employees earning $5,000 or more per year, you're going to have to comply with this plan. So you're going to be essentially in 2 buckets. Either you have a plan currently, you're just going to need to go to the state website, myctsavings.com, and essentially let them know that you do have a plan and you're good. If you don't have a plan, you're going to be forced with 2 options. Either you can set up your own retirement plan, and the eligible plans are a 401k, a Simple IRA, and a SEP IRA. Payroll deduct IRAs don't count in case you have those, which is ironic because actually that's what the state plan is. The state plan is basically you set up a Roth IRA and do deductions for your employees. Now, in terms of the timing, they chunk it out in 3 groups. So open enrollment for all 3 groups has started April 1st. So if you do have a plan and you want to just get this off your plate, go to the site now. You can actually register even if you fall in these other 3 categories and just make sure that's done. So basically the first wave is going to come with employees of 100 or more employees. And the deadline to register or get a plan is the end of June this year. So June 30th, 2022. If you're 26 to 99 employees, you have till the end of October of this year. And if you have between 5 and 25 employees, you have till the end of March next year to comply with the state regulations. So you do have a little bit of time, especially in that smaller group, but I would recommend trying to get ahead of this and not waiting until the last minute to get everything set up. And one other quick thing from a employee mandate standpoint, you do have to automatically enroll employees. So once they hit, if they're already enrolled, you have to enroll them now, already employed. And if they've been employed at least 120 days, they have to get onto the plan.
Yeah, so before we hopped on, we were talking about our restaurants, an industry that continues to struggle coming out of COVID. So it looks really like they'll be in that, 3/31/23 with the 5 to 25 employees. But the turnover, as you said, it is so great. So how, what's the best way? I guess it's just going to be an administrative burden to track and keep track of all your employees coming in and out.
Yeah, I mean, that's ironically or frankly going to be the biggest cost to the employer is really making sure you're managing this whole process. You do have that 120-day window. So I get a lot of questions about seasonal employees and, college kids coming for the summer break working for the employer. So as long as they're less than 120 days, we don't have to add them to the plan or enroll them. Your 401k plans may have different requirements that are less inclusive. But there's some management with that, and I would recommend really working with a payroll provider that is aware of this rule, because you're going to be working in tandem with your payroll provider to make sure that your employees are enrolled on time, the deductions are taken on time, people that unenroll are taken off the plan in a timely fashion. Because if not, there are some civil liabilities that can occur for employers that don't comply with the issue. We haven't gotten firm numbers yet on what that would be, but I'm sure they won't be cheap.
Yeah, so we just had a couple more people join us. So thank you all for being here today. Again, talking about the MyCT Savings Plan with Derek Mazzarella, Gateway Financial Partners, and Eric Judge from Edward Jones. I'm Jessica Olander, the president of the Connecticut River Valley Chamber. And just a reminder, you can add a question in the chat. I'm monitoring that, or use the Q&A feature. And then I just want to do a quick poll and see who we have on with us. What are your the number of employees that you do have, and you will fall into this category to have these IRAs and benefit plans. You're going to need to set these up. Yep, so it looks like 6 to 10 and 11 plus, so a little bit bigger. So the Connecticut River Valley Chamber, we represent, a woman who sells doTERRA oils all the way up to Pratt and Whitney. So for us, this is super important to kind of get the word out about this and what people are going to have to do. So it looks like we're in the 6 to 10 and 11 plus range for that. Perfect. So can you talk a little bit about the responsibilities and the fees of the program, Derek?
Yeah, so directly for the employer, there's no fee to sign up for the state-run plan. So they're not going to charge you for joining their plan. Like I said, your real cost is going to be the administrative cost, and sometimes a payroll provider will charge you per line item of each deduction. So that's one thing to definitely be aware of. But from an employee standpoint, there are two types of fees. There's a fee based on your account value. That's called an asset-based fee. The program itself will charge you 0.22% per year for it. And then depending on whatever investment you choose, there's also a fee for the investment. Now these actually investment fees are pretty low. They run from 0.035% to about 0.1. So they use low cost index funds in their investment lineup. There's also an annual $26 fee, and you'll see that billed out of your account on a quarterly basis. So, when you have a lower amount in your IRA to begin with, that $26 fee can actually be pretty costly. But as you get more value in the account, that number essentially drops as a percentage of your total assets.
So that's per account. So each employee who sets up the benefit plan would get billed the $26 out of their plan.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, excellent. It does seem like a heavy administrative burden, especially for our smaller businesses who might not know where to start. So I'm really happy to have the two of you who are active chamber members. Eric Judge serves as our treasurer. Derek Mazzarella is involved in our Spark, our young professionals group, and leadership of the chamber. So, we've got some good members here that you could be using to set some of these plans up. Next up, so we want to talk a little bit about what are your options. Eric, can you discuss what those are?
Yes, absolutely. The options that you should consider, one is Simple IRA or 401k. Looking at the Simple IRA would allow you to actually have deductions from your salary that could potentially lower your tax liability. And that's one thing to think about with the My CT savings plan. That's Roth. Those are after-tax dollars. So if your employees or you, because you as an employer, if from a tax standpoint, you qualify also as an employee, you need to be aware that you could also contribute to that plan. However, do you need more tax deferred contributions versus after tax? That's something for you to seriously consider. And right now, the Simple IRA allows $14,000 to come from your salary. There was actually an increase of $13,500 was from last year. And then for those who are over age 50, there's a $3,000 catch-up provision. If 401k makes more sense for those companies with employees that need to contribute more than those numbers that I just mentioned, the good news is the 401k now allows the employees to have $20,500 deducted. And for the catch-up for those age 50 and above is now $6,500. So you could actually have a total of $27,000 or more go into the plan, depending upon whether you as an employer want to match contributions, et cetera. So I think that's one of the fundamental things that you really should think about as you're trying to decide whether you want to actually implement your own employer sponsored plan. Jessica, if you could go to the next slide.
Sure.
I think it's very useful to think about some numbers. Oh, sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
So
This one, sorry.
One of the things that you need to think about on that tax deduction. So as employee is actually contributing, the amount that they're going to fill on a plan like a Simple IRA or 401k is going to be less than the Roth, right? That's actually after tax. So if they're contributing $100, for example, they're going to feel the full impact of that versus if they were in a plan that allowed those contributions to actually lower their salary. Let's just assume they're in a 24% bracket. They would actually have a net impact on their paycheck of $76, for example.
Got it. And I think I had the same slide in here, Eric. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
And what are the triggering events and early withdrawal penalties that you
Yeah, so
here?
considerations are, these plans are all intended to actually, help you when you no longer are working, have an income in retirement. So your access to them is intended to wait until you're at least 59 and a half. And if you don't do that and you try to access the monies, there would be a 10% penalty. Otherwise, waiting until after those dates to access the money, there'd just be tax implications for the amounts that you withdraw.
Got it. And what would be a triggering event? Would that be?
Yeah. So once again, people would have access to the money if they were able to disabled, if unfortunate things should happen in their life where they die, their beneficiaries or the loved ones would have access to it. And actually leaving an employer, right, allows you to access those monies. Those are triggering events.
And how do you figure out if the state plan, a 401k, or the simple is the best? Does it depend on the number of employees or?
Great question. So one of the things that you really want to consider, besides the dollar amounts that you think you or your employees want to put in, is also cost. So with a Simple IRA or 401k, the all-in costs are probably something on average of about 1.2%. That's one thing to consider. You also, one of the things that you want to be aware of with the state plan, they are not monitoring whether you are actually eligible to contribute to a Roth. The Roth has provisions for certain people. And once again, if an employer is making a decent income level and maybe combined with their spouse and they're combined, filing their taxes together, they may not be eligible to contribute to a Roth plan. So that's something I think those employers who are also employees for tax purposes should keep in mind.
Got it. And then I just had a question. I see one popping up in the chat now. Does the employer decide what kind of plan they can use?
Absolutely. That
Okay.
is totally at their discretion. And I think, the dates that Derek put in front of you are very important. So staying ahead of that and meeting with a financial advisor who can help kind of guide you through the different options that might make the most sense for you would be important to do before those dates.
Yeah, keep an eye on those dates. And how long?
Well, just can I jump in and just maybe ask a
Yeah.
follow-up question to Eric? So Eric,
Absolutely.
can you give us an idea of how long it typically takes to set up, let's say, a simple IRA and a 401k?
That
So
was
people
my
have an idea.
question, Derek.
Yes. So in terms of timing, the Simple IRA, you need to put it in place before October 1st. And I mean, really working with the right providers, there's no reason why you can't have this set up in a month or two. So you need to keep that kind of timeline involved. And Derek, thank you for the question.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people aren't waiting till last minute and calling you on September 29th and saying, hey, can I get a simple IRA set up? It's
a great point.
I want to avoid for sure.
So that takes a month or two. If they're going to go with the state plan, what does that look like, or the Roth for time?
It should be about 1 to 2 weeks typically. The problem is we don't have a ton of stats on exactly how long it takes up because this is so new.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much go on the site, register, work with your payroll provider, and typically that would take about 1 to 2 weeks.
So if they don't have a payroll provider, and I can just envision some of our members, handwriting out payroll checks each week, what does that look like for them to monitor a plan like this? So you would obviously recommend having a professional involved with this. As you said, there's a lot of administrative tasks.
You're correct. I mean, you really have to be on the ball and really know, especially if you're like, and let's say that restaurant, right? And you have employee turnover that's constantly happening. You have to really make sure you're taking people on the plan, adding them at the right time, deducting the right amount. The one thing about the plan too is it automatically requires you to put 3% into the plan of the employee's paycheck. And then each year it's going to auto escalate. So you have to know, okay, a year after they join the plan, I have to take away another % and put it into their plan for them, unless they go on the site and tell them, say, hey, look, I only want to put in 3%, or I want to opt out. So it's on the employee to really communicate well with the employer. This is what I'm putting in. I'm opting out of the plan. I only want to do this amount. So there could be some definitely issues that arise if there's a lack of communication between, and quite frankly, I don't, Eric and I probably don't know exactly what the communication is back and forth between my CT savings and the employer. And that's definitely one thing to consider is, are we doing everything correctly and in line with the requirements?
Jessica, one of the things you had touched on earlier about administrative burden, I would also like the employers to give some consideration to the fact that, regardless of the plan they go with, who's actually able to contribute. So in the case of a simple IRA or 401k, there's typically an age requirement of being at least 21 and having, at least a year of service. And Derek can go into what that might be with my CT savings.
Yeah, my CT savings is actually 19, so it's a lower bar. So if an employee wants to get in there, then they can get in there a little earlier than normal. And yeah, it's a great point, Eric.
We just got another question. So for the state plan, is there a minimum contribution for the employee? I think you said it was the 3%.
Yep, you automatically enroll into the 3%.
Yep.
Employees can change it. And there's no employer match either. So that's another thing. If you want to try and add a match to your plan, the 401k and Simple IRA will let you do that. The My CT Savings plan will not let you match the plan whatsoever.
And one thing on that, and thank you for bringing that up, I want to remind some of the employers who, depending on resources, might not be able to make a match. Some people may be led to believe that you have to match with a 401k, and there's flexibility depending on how much some of the higher earning people are actually making might drive whether you need to do that or not. I just want to remind you there is some flexibility and some things that you would want to discuss with a particular advisor who might be helping you figure out which plan is best for you.
Yeah, and I typically, choosing a plan can be challenging. So I usually try and kind of start with the basics. And it's really two questions. What do you want to do for yourself as an employer? Do you have a need to save money? Do you have a tax issue that you need to take deductions for? And then do you want to incentivize the employees to stay? And, would a match help with that? So I think you really want to figure out, if you're trying to figure out which plan makes sense for you, think about what do you want to do for yourself as the employer, but then also, how do you want to take care of your employees?
Yeah, so this could be helpful with workforce development. As we all know, everybody's looking for people to work. This is a great, as you said, incentive to kind of get people and say, look, I can invest in myself, I can invest in this company. And I think it would add to the, people staying maybe a little longer than they might think about. Another question, does the MyCT plan apply to nonprofits? That's a great question.
Yep, all employers throughout the state. So there's no industry specific, nonprofits are included.
Wow.
So if you are that nonprofit, as long as you have 5 employees and make $5,000, you are required to, either opt in the plan or opt out.
Wow. Very interesting. All of the, the lingo that you're throwing around here, I think, people, it would behoove people to sit down with yourself or Eric and really kind of get a sense of what needs to be done and what you have to do, what you're tasked with. So let's see. Go ahead.
Yeah, and with that, Jessica, so on that, thank you. So for the not-for-profits, it would be a 403B plan. And in terms of contributions amount, 19,005 was last year's number. This year's number is actually 20,500 that you would be able to reduce your salary by, right? And then for those age 50 and older, it actually would be the 6,500. So that is a consideration.
Excellent. All right, so next up, we're looking at, I think we talked about the fees for the employer and the employee, so we covered that. What does the plan investment lineup look like? Can you talk a little bit about this, Derek?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, it falls in 2 categories, and this is another fairly big difference between the state plan and the Simple IRA or 401k lineup that you can get. Basically, you have either a target date fund, which basically picks your allocation for you, so your mix of stocks and bonds, and then manages it over time. So you see, let's say on the slide 2070, it's going to be really aggressive, so stock heavy first, and then as you get closer to that retirement date of 2070, it'll get a little more conservative, so a little bit more bond heavy. Then you see below that you have a cash option. I almost never recommend a cash option in a retirement plan because you're adding money in every cycle, and as the market drops and goes up, you're usually buying stuff at a discount or buying less when it's expensive. I don't like cash in portfolios like that. And then below that, there's different managed accounts. So they're going to not move and shift your allocation over time. But if you're someone that says, I'm really conservative and I don't ever want to move out of that lane, that's where your income portfolio would come in. That's going to be mostly bond heavy. And then as you see down the list here, you get to the growth, which is going to be mostly stock. So the difference is those portfolios are going to basically stay as is with that allocation they're not going to change over time. So if you're picking the balanced portfolio, it's going to be half stock, half bonds, and it's going to stay that way basically as long as there is. And these are basically managed by Vestwell company, and they're made up of low cost ETFs like Vanguard, Charles Schwab, and some of the other lower cost providers.
Interesting. So these would be portfolios that the employees and the employers would be investing in. One more question I see.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff, let me get one. Sorry, one thing I forgot to mention was,
Yeah.
So the difference between this plan and the Simple and the 401k is you can choose your own investment lineup with a Simple IRA or a 401k plan. These plans, you're basically buying an allocation model. If you wanted to go 100% in the S&P 500, you could not do that with a state plan, but you can do that with a 401k or a Simple IRA. So you do have more investment freedom with the Simple IRA, 403B, or 401k.
Got it. And we do have another question. So for the state plan, does the employer select the investment plan or does the employee select it?
Eric, do you want to tackle this one, or you want me to?
Sure. Basically, the employers are in charge, and I think that's a consideration as you go toward with this plan. You want to make sure they have some guidance. As Derek mentioned, they've tried to simplify it, because basically they're going to automatically put the employees into one of the lineups that's closer to their actual retirement date. So, in terms of employees trying to opt out of that and do something on their own, they might need a little guidance.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it is on the employee to choose their own investments. And if they do nothing, they're going to be defaulted to the target date portfolio that lines up with their age bracket.
Got it. So the employees can select the investments as it's, once the plan is set up. Got it.
Mhm.
Interesting. Any other thoughts before we end here? I know that was a quick down and dirty. I think we'll be running a couple more of these as people start to realize, hey, it's coming up and I have 50 employees and I need to get this done. So any final thoughts, Eric?
None from me.
And Derek?
Yeah, maybe just one. I don't know if we touched on this, but if you do already have a Roth IRA or just an outside traditional IRA, you're allowed to put $6,000 a year into it, and you can't double dip and do the state plan and the IRA. So, if you're an employee, you do have to opt out of the state plan. So make sure you're not double dipping. It doesn't mean because you have two, you can contribute to both.
Got it. Well, thank you both for being here, and thank you all for being online with us. Again, I think we'll be running a few of these. This was our first, but I think it's an important topic, and we definitely have some more slides that we need to add in as we talk and get these questions. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Again, if you need anything, you can always reach out, jessica@crvchamber.org, and I will send these slides and Eric and Derek's contact information after this event. So thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Excellent.
It was good tag team.